is Lisa Bergstrand, and I'm the founder of A New Sweden. I started in 2017 trying to prove that it's possible to make clothing in a better way. And to define better, I came to the conclusion that it was using a natural material that we have locally and also a production that is as local as possible. So I started looking around what we have locally, and wool came up very early as a very good material, and that we have a lot of. And I learned a lot about all the good properties about wool that I actually didn't know, even though I already worked 15 years in the fashion industry.
Hi, my name is Anthony Lilly. I'm co-founder of A New Sweden. What we do is we make exceptional garments. We make them to stand the test of time, both from a quality perspective and a styling perspective. All of our garments are made by hand in Sweden from our own woolen fabrics. We commission the knitting and the weaving of our fabrics from 100% wool, sourced from rare breed sheep from farms that we've visited personally. That's in Sweden. The thought around being as local as possible is because in the textile clothing supply chain, it is so global and so long, it's very hard for all of the steps to be accountable. So if you want to do things in a good way, you need to really know the suppliers, you need to know the manufacturers, and if you want to be sustainable, you're not necessarily flying to all corners of the world to do that. So that was the kind of thought behind everything being as local as possible.
Some of the very many challenges with producing clothes from local material and producing locally was finding the whole supply chain locally. So we started with traveling around the country and seeing what was already here. We already visited a lot of sheep farmers in Jämtland in the very beginning, in the first sort of Sweden trip that we made. And that's when we learned about the Jämtland wool and how it was the finest wool that we have in Sweden. And that's why we chose to start with that. But then there was a big challenge to find all of the steps of the supply chain.
There was actually just no supply chain that existed. There was no logistics network. So everything was really sort of like built from the ground up, which is why I think also it's like a barrier for a lot of other companies to do what we did in the way that we've done it.
There's definitely a bigger conversation around Swedish wool and how much that's being thrown away. And we know that it's not 70% anymore, it's around 50%. And there's more companies that are using it. But when it comes to logistics and that, I don't think it has gotten that much better. There are a few actors that you can buy the wool from. We prefer to buy it directly from the farm. That's not the hard part. I think it's to send it in between all of the other steps of the supply chain, and again to get the highest quality that we want.
The jersey that we have for this sweatshirt, it's knitted in Denmark, because none of the knitting mills in Sweden had the expertise to work with the type of gauge.
I do feel like there are more sewing factories now, but when it comes to high quality, it's still very few that can keep the quality that we want. When it comes to collaborations in the value chain, we need some sort of national wool collecting centers all over the country, not just in the south, but also all the way up north where I'm from. And we need people that can sort it. But this is something that I believe has to be financed from a government perspective and not from different organizations. I think this is the only way we can actually use all of the wool that we produce. It's very important to show that it is better also in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, the way that we farm the wool and how much the land takes up of carbon emissions. So since I work in the fashion industry with sustainability questions also with other companies, I know that this is something that is very important for many companies, and wool tend to get the worst emissions of all materials. And I think here for Swedish wool, we have a great opportunity if we can just making an LCA to get the right data to show how much emission we have of the wool, especially if it's seen as a byproduct. I think that is something that's very important. I think it's not necessary to have the entire supply chain in Sweden. Like the most important thing is that we actually use the resource that we have. If we don't have every step of the supply chain in the country, it shouldn't be a barrier. Like it's for us, we decided to work with Biella in northern Italy because they are experts in many areas where we don't have the expertise in Sweden anymore. And it's actually closer from our sewing factory in Malmö to Biella in Italy than it is from our sewing factory in Malmö to where our company is based in Norrbotten. So the EU has to be a circular economy latest 2050, and wool is a great resource that is circular already by itself. So we just have to find a way to use it. Wool is going to play a big role in changing the way that we produce and consume, hopefully.
Swedish wool is pretty much the most ethical wool that you can buy on the market now. And the reason why that is because the farmers that we buy from, like they are already using regenerative farming techniques. It is very difficult in Sweden to treat an animal badly. So animal sentience is enshrined in the Swedish legislation, which is not the case in most wool producing countries. So if you actually look at like the sort of quality of the wool and the ethics that are tied to wool, you're not going to get a better source of wool than what is coming from Sweden right now. I mean, one of the things that we really try to do and are going to do more in the future is use more landrace breeds of sheep. Because also, like, we need to keep biodiversity alive, right? Like, there's no point in more wool being used if it's just merino. There is, like, we need to keep, like, the gene pool for sheep, like super diverse.
So this fall we're launching our sweatshirt in black, which has been requested by many of our customers, but we hadn't found a way to dye it in a way that aligns with our values. So now we have done a natural dye close to Biella in Italy, where we do the spinning. So we will have a fully black sweatshirt that is naturally dyed with bark.
This method of dyeing is the same method of dyeing that they've actually been using since the Renaissance times. It's super rich. We've been testing the wash of it, and it has not faded in like the 10, 20 times that we've been washing it. Lisa spent a lot of time and effort to make this really beautiful jersey, and we've also made like an incredible woven vadmal, which is super wind and rain resistant. But we've only kind of made like one garment of each fabric. So what we're doing now is we're actually launching a collection for our vadmal fabric. So we're going to make a vest, and we're also launching a coat, so like a longer version of our jacket. And yeah, so we're pretty excited about these coming out.